Hello guys, today we will improve and finish our Minesweeper game. At the end we will export and publish the game to itch.io, but I guess I will separate this part in another video and put the link at the first comment to make it easier for people that just want to see how to export and upload the game. Just to remember, this was the simple Minesweeper game we made at the last video. And to improve it, we will create a way to set the flag tiles. We will give options of grid size and number of bombs. We will create an intro screen and we will change the code to open the zeros and adjacent tiles like it happens in the real Minesweeper. So let's start loading an image to be our flag. Now we need to change the signal we want to capture here, because the pressed signal just captures a pressed button, but we can check which button was pressed. So let's use the key input signal. Let's just change the name of our parameters, because they are using the same names of other variables, and because of that Godot is marking these lines. Okay, now let's go back to our tile clicked function. That is the function we call when we capture the signal. And this key input signal passes a parameter, that is the event that triggered the signal. So let's add the event parameter. And now we check if the event is a mouse button. And now let's add an action for our left mouse button so that we can capture it easily. And we check if this is the action in the mouse right button. We can call a function to toggle the flag at this tile. Now let's create the function. So first we check if the text inside this tile is empty. That means it is not revealed yet. Then we check if it has not a flag icon yet. And if not, we can add a flag icon to it. But if it already has a flag, we can remove the flag from it. So let's run the project. And as we can see, the flag seems to be working fine. Now let's make it possible to change the grid size and the number of bombs. So let's add the variables to hold these values. As we want the grid size to change, we need to create it following the chosen size. We can erase all the tiles we have here at the editor and generate them all dynamically, but I want to keep them so that I can see how our grid is with the changes we will be making. So I just want to add the tiles that are missing. Then we check if the current tiles array size is smaller than the value we passed as the number of tiles. And if so, we need to run a for to create these tiles. As we don't have to create the 16 tiles we already have inside our grid, we can just reduce the actual grid size from the number of tiles. Then we have to set the columns for our new grid, and we have to create the buttons to be our tiles. Let's declare a variable to hold the button node, and now we instantiate this button as many times as we need here in our loop. And let's change the minimum size of each button to be at the same size of our already created tiles. Then we add these tiles as a child of our grid and add the tile to our tiles array. Now let's run it. And there we can see the grid is already at the correct size.
But we can see that we have some problem now, as our tiles don't show the correct numbers of adjacent bombs anymore. So let's check that. We can cast this float to int, just to remove this alert. Now let's find out why the numbers are incorrect. Oh, and here's the problem. I have changed the name of this variable, but I missed one. Let's run it again. So it's working now. Let's start to improve our interface a little. So let's add a color rect for the background. And we want to create a label for numbers of bombs and a timer, and a button to go to the main screen so that the player can go back to choose the grid size and bombs. So basically this HBox container and VBox container are your best friends to position things on the screen in a horizontal or vertical line. I really like these things. Let's center everything and let's run it quickly. Okay. Now let's create the intro screen. So we create a new scene. Then I will add a color rect for the background. Now let's add a VBox container to align the elements here. Then let's add a rich label text. If you don't know, this node is basically a fancy version of the normal label. It has some built-in effects like this wave, rainbow and many others. So as this game is just a tutorial, I will use that. You are probably questioning my art choices now, but the point is just to make it work. So let's add another HBox container to add more buttons. And here we can use a label and an option button so that the player can choose the grid size. And another label and spin box for the number of mines. Let's add a separator here to increase the space between these buttons. And we can add a button to start the game. Let's increase it a little. Let's add another separator to separate these elements. You could for sure just move the buttons if you don't like the separator. Do it as you like most, I'm just trying to show the options. And as I'm planning to put this game at itch.io, I will add a little label at the bottom about the channel. Now let's increase the font of the grids button to make it the same size of the label. And we will do it too at the spin box, but here it's a little different as we have to add a theme and then we can increase the font size here. And that's it. Now let's add the options to the option button. Just click and add the text. I will add some options here. I guess this is enough for our project. Now we have to find a way to pass the values chosen in this scene to the actual game. There are multiple ways of doing that. I will do it creating an autoload. And autoload is basically a script that's loaded at the beginning of the project and can be accessed by any other script. So let's create the script here. I will name it globals, but you can put the name you want. And then we have to set the script as an auto load here at the settings. Then we add it here, and that's it. Now let's create a script for our intro screen. First, let's preload our game scene. Now we can capture the signal from our option button to get the selected item. And we can use a match to set the value at our global script matching the selected item. Let's add the variables at our global script. Let's give some default values to them. And back to our match, let's add some minimum and maximum values for our spin box to avoid the player offsetting an impossible number of bombs. And then we can copy and paste it here and change the values to something that makes sense. I guess these values are okay, but of course you can change them if you want. And now we can add a function to start our game. Here we will get the value of our spin box and put it in the global variable, and then we change the scene to our game. Let's test the buttons. We can see that the limits are working. Let's start the game. The game is starting, but we have to adjust the game now, so let's do it. So let's go back to our main scene. And here we can take the values for grid size and number of bombs from our global script. And let's create a variable for the timer too. Let's run it to see if the grid size is adjusting, and there we can see the grid size is already adjusting as expected. Let's make our labels show the correct values now. So let's change the text here at the beginning. And we have to add a timer. And then we can connect the timeout signal so that we can change the time at every second. And then basically what we want to do is increase the timer and update the label at each second if the game is not over. And if the game is over, we stop the timer. Let's check it. And there it is. Now we just have to make this button to the intro screen work. So basically we preload the intro screen here. Okay, so now I guess this is the last task. That is reveal all the zeros and adjacent tiles like it happens in the original Minesweeper game. Let's change our logic to make it easier to understand. So let's check our reveal function. So if it is a bomb, the game is over. Then we can put a return here to make it stop the function when the game is over. Other scenario we can eliminate is when the text is already shown. In this case we don't need to do anything, so we can just stop the function too. And here, our main point, we have to check if the clicked tile is a 0, and if so, we will get all the adjacent tiles of the clicked tile. So we have to create a function to do that later and save it at this edge variable. But let's finish this logic first. So if we have all the adjacent tiles, we have to check all of them, and if they are not a reveal tile, we pass them to the reveal function again. And let's create this get adjacents function. I will create variables for the columns
and rows, but as our grid is a square, they are the same.
And here we will get the coordinate of the tile as we have done before. And we create an array to hold the adjacent tiles. We use true for to loop through the adjacent tiles in the x and y axis. If x and y is 0, it means it is the current tile, so we can skip it with continue. And then we check if the tile is really inside the board, and if so we can add it as an adjacent tile. And we finish the function returning the adjacent array. Now let's run it. It seems we have some bug, as everything is opening at once. Let's find the problem. Let's add a condition to not open tiles that are with a flag. And after reviewing the code for some time, I figured out I changed the module and the division here in this function, and that was the problem. So we just had to change it here, and now our game should work properly. This function basically receives the position of an element in an array and the number of columns, and gives the position of this element in a matrix with that number of columns. Now let's run it again. And it seems to be working properly now, but the button to go back to the intro screen is not working. So let's check that. It seems to be some recursive error, because we are loading one scene at the other, but I fixed it loading the intro screen here by using this other function that loads by file, and so the error is gone. I guess we aren't updating the number of bombs, so let's fix that quickly. And so our base game is finished. I will post it at itch.io, but I will make it in a separate video, and I will post it at the same time, so if you want to check it, I will put a link in the first comment. And so that's it for this video, guys. Thank you for watching, and bye!